Welcome back to Media Beat. I'm Chris Arians, editorial director here at MediaBeaster.com, and we're here with Rick Sanchez, anchor of Rick's List on CNN. Every weekday afternoon you can watch it. We want to talk a little bit about, in this segment, how you got to CNN. In 2001, you left local news, WSVN. Right. You went national. You joined MSNBC. Full disclosure, I produced a couple of your shows when I was a producer there at MSNBC. But that was a relatively short run. And later, when you were asked about your experience there, some longtime anchors, including Tim Russert, Tom Brokaw, Brian Williams, they said that you said pretty much let me know that I didn't belong there at NBC and MSNBC. What did you take away from that experience? What did you learn from it?
That I sucked. It was a time in my life when I wasn't ready. Look, that jump from local news to suddenly being at the network is tough. You know, it's a very different business. And I was very much intimidated. I write about this in my book. When you've admired Tom Brokaw your entire life, and Tim Russert, and Chris Matthews, and all the guys who were big superstars when I first got there, and suddenly they're sitting at the table in front of you, and you're supposed to interview them. There's a certain factor that goes in, and you're not quite as sharp.
So you leave MSNBC, you stay in the NBC family, you go back to WTVJ, which is the station in Miami. You did a daytime show there for about a year. Mm-hmm. That didn't last too long. You go back to CNN. What made you want to go back to national network news?
Well, the president of CNN at the time was a fellow named Prince Al Hair. Prince Al Hair was in the Bahamas vacationing with his family. He turns on the TV and he's watching me on television because Miami television is broadcast into the Bahamas. So he picks up the phone and he calls and he said, I'm sitting here watching you and I'm thinking, would you like to come and work at CNN? And I'm saying, well, you know, yeah, I would. He said, look, I don't think you're using all of your talents right now with what you're doing in South Florida, and I think it's a perfect opportunity for you to do something a little different. And I think maybe we can work on something that would work out. And we got together, we talked. Now, Prince Sal, interestingly enough, also had worked with me when I was in South Florida. He had been a producer for one of the shows that I anchored. So we'd known each other for an awful long time, and then he'd moved up to become this very important man over at CNN. So when I took his call, I was looking forward to hooking back up with him.
So you land at CNN, you're doing some correspondent work, you're covering hurricanes and things like that, and then you get a shot at having your own show again. Mm-hmm. And it was on at 3 o'clock. It was just an hour at the time. You grew that time slot 25% mm-hmm. from the month prior to the month after you took over.
Yeah.
How much do you think was it your style, or how much do you think it was the fact that you did start working sort of that two-way engagement with your viewers?
I think it was probably a combination of both things. I mean, I'll just be honest with you, you get to a point in your life, Chris, and in your career where you just start getting very comfortable at knowing what works on television, and you get a pretty good sense of what viewers are going to respond to. And while I just said a little while ago that when I was at MSNBC, I didn't get that, and I sucked, and I wasn't able to do that, I'm at a point in my career now where I've got a pretty good feel as to how to engage an audience. And the caveat, the best part of that is the fact that I'm now also not just engaging the audience on television, but I'm also engaging the audience on social media. I've taken both, and I write about this in my book. I've taken both and married them into something that makes me a better journalist. It makes me a better communicator, and it makes my show better able to adapt to the news of the day, whether it's a tweet sent personally to me in the middle of my newscast from John Boehner answering a charge that was raised by President Obama against him, as we did just yesterday when we were doing our newscast, or it's somebody who may not be as famous as John Boehner, but also has something very important to say. Or it may be consensus building, where I see a pattern emerging on from 140,000 people that follow me, where I see everybody seems to be thinking this. I wonder why. Let's explore that. Boom, and we'll do a story. So it makes it a much more fluid, much more organic, very different, and I think a very engaging newscast.
Do your bosses ever, back to the TV part of it, do your bosses ever say, okay, Rick, tone it down a little bit? Come on.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, it's all good, though. You get a lot of feedback. I mean, at the very beginning, there was a lot of concern. at CNN about what was I doing and why was I doing this. But I will tell you this, the best part of all is I didn't even learn about Twitter until John Klein and I were having breakfast in Chicago one day. And he says, have you heard about this Twitter thing? And I said, not really, tell me about it. And he goes on to tell me all about Twitter. Well, I'd known about Facebook and MySpace, but Twitter at the time was kind of new. So he was the one who actually gave me the idea, the permission, so to speak, to go out there and investigate this. The next day after that weekend, Monday, I go back to work. I sit around with some of the guys on my staff who are a lot smarter than I am, and I said, tell me how we can incorporate Twitter. And one of the fellows, Chris Hall, says, here's what we do. We take up, just for now, I'll set you up with a Twitter account. You put the laptop on top of your desk, and while you're anchoring the news, check and see what people are saying. And if you think from time to time that there's something worth sharing with the audience, we'll bring in a camera over your shoulder and we'll shoot it. And that's the way it started. Today it involves plasmas and other staff members, and it's really turned into something pretty cool and pretty special.
Yeah. We're here with Rick Sanchez, author of Conventional Idiocy, Why the New America is Sick of Old Politics. We'll be back in just a little bit. We're going to talk more about how Rick uses Twitter and Facebook and social media to engage with his audience.